Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Danny, and I'm going to help you develop from the ground up a MERN stack app. That is a full stack app with a Mongo backend, and it's going to have some entry points where you're going to basically have a shop. Like you can have if you want to develop an app where people can make purchases, you can have subscriptions, however you want to do that. But in our app, we'll try to keep it simple. Basically, you're gonna have the ability to use what's called Stripe to basically have your customer be able to manage their payments and so on and so forth. Stripe basically does all that for you. So we're just going to jump right in. Again, I'm going to assume you have no prior knowledge of coding. And the goal here is to develop, I'm not going to just write code by myself. I'm going to have the AI kind of write the code for me. And I'm going to teach you how to prompt the AI so that you can basically develop without really any prior knowledge. All right. So the first thing you're going to need is something called Git Bash. Um, it's like a terminal emulator, and you can download this from the internet. Just Google Git Bash, download it. Just the typical download method, and this will allow you to kind of have a central location where you can, run your app. Takes look at some of the files and just kind of get. You should be familiar with being able to use something like this. All right, so the first thing you're gonna need is to run the app and to begin development is something called Node and also NPM. Now, Node and NPM, you can just download them again. Just Google, go through the typical download process, keep everything as is normal. No need to add any extra things unless you want to, of course. Just download Node, and with Node, you'll get the package. Keep in mind, you may have to restart your computer once you download the app because a lot of times it won't be in your system path. We won't get into all the details of that, but just make sure you have Node. You'll be able to know if you have it when you type in the command node-v. That'll tell you the version of Node. You may have a newer version if you're watching this at in a future date, or if maybe you have had Node in the past and you just want to work from whatever version you have. It should be fine. I'm gonna just show you that this is the version I'm using. Also, again, as I said, you need npm. That should come with Node. If you see it when you're installing, it should just tell you, hey, we're going to have npm. We're going to download npm as well. And that's usually just a default option. So you can just double check that by typing in npm-v. That'll tell you the version. And now you know you have what you need. So to begin with, we're going to make a directory where all of our files are going to go, your entire program, right? So to make a directory in Git Bash, you just type in make dir, and then you just type in the name of the file or the folder that you're going to be using to develop, to work from. Okay, so we'll call this full stack example, something like that. All right, so now you have full stack example. I'm not gonna show you. Let's see. If you want to go into that folder, you type in ls full, and then you should be able to press tab. I think I already have something called full stack, so just type in a few more letters and then type in tab, full stack example. Now I'm in there. Okay, oops, full stack example. All right, so now I'm in that file. Let me clear this. Okay, so now I'm inside the full stack example. Obviously, there's nothing in there. When I type in ls, you're not seeing any folders. That's okay. So then what I want to do is I want to open up my IDE. That's basically just whatever kind of application you're going to use to kind of develop. It's going to give you some assistance, so on and so forth. Something like Visual Studios, whatever it is you're comfortable with. I like Visual Code. It's lightweight. You can download that online. But for me, I use Visual Studio Code, and I can just open that by pressing Code and dot. Okay, and you don't have to use this again. You can use another one, but I recommend this. I like it. It's easy to open from Bash. I type in this, I press enter, and it will just open from the folder that I'm using to develop, where I'm putting all the files, so on and so forth. Okay, so you can see I have the file open in the IDE. There's nothing in it. Okay. So to begin the process of developing, I usually work from the front end first. That way I kind of know, this is where the program starts. This is what you see visually. And then as I develop the front end, I just, sometimes I go to the back end and then I move back and forth like that. But the front end is kind of like the first thing in my mind. It's what the user is going to see first. So to begin with the front end, I recommend, that there are some commands you can run if you know them, that's great. But we're going to assume you don't know anything. So you want to type in create React app or something like that. And why are we doing a create React app? Because again, the stack we're using is called MERN. MERN stands for Mongo, Express, React, and Node, and those are the four technologies we're going to use more or less. Okay, so if you type in create React app, it usually gives you like the first command to type to generate your app. This is just basically going to use a particular library or application that will basically develop your app for you. That means it'll just give you like the basis for your app, how your front end. Okay, so npx create React app and then the name of the app. That's typically the command you use. Now, sometimes you'll type this in, you'll notice that you don't have npx or whatever it is that is suggested. Usually it's npx. If you don't have that, you may have to proceed with trying to install it. It's usually comes with Node, I believe, but sometimes you have to, do some extra legwork to get it. And you can also prompt ChatGPT for that. But in this case, I'm just going to assume that you have it. So npx create React, and we're going to have to call the app something. So let's call it full stack test. Okay. Now, it begins to create the app, but look, I did this kind of on purpose because this is a common mistake. If you type in the name of the app and it has some capitals in it, you'll get this error, and that's okay. You got to get comfortable with reading errors. That's the one thing that really becomes helpful as you get later into the project. Okay, so get comfortable with understanding what the errors are saying, and if you have to, I recommend just copying the full error and putting it into ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT will kind of let you know, why the error is occurring and what you might need to do to fix it. In this case, it's pretty obvious. You can't use a capital letter, so we'll do full stack test. Okay, we press enter. That's the name of the app. It's going to begin generating the app. And as you can see, it generates a folder within the full stack example folder that we created. And it begins by creating a package.json. Very important file here. The package.json is kind of like the instructions for how to build your app and what kind of libraries that you're going to need. The reason this file is created is to basically tell your environment how to run your app. So locally, it's going to run, it's going to be fine, but sometimes you'll have to make some minor adjustments to the package.json if you want to host this, which eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to want to host this online. You'll use some kind of service. In our case, we're going to use Heroku, which is a very common server site. It's a site where you can kind of upload your code, and it will allow you to put your application online, and then you'll be able to kind of go to the application as it's running from anywhere in the world, test it out, develop a production ready code base, and then eventually link it to a domain of some sort. Okay, so this takes a little bit of time. It's going to basically build, like I said, build the front end for you at the most basic level, and then you can begin making additions. React is very nice in this way because it kind of it starts you off with a basic structure, and then it's up to you to kind of make that front end look better. Direct the user, and give them a more special experience. Okay, so you see that the package.json has it's definitely got more information in it. It's got more libraries. It's got some scripts. This is very important, the scripts section. This is basically how you run your application. There's also some new folders here that you can see. There's the node folder, the node modules folder. It's a very, very important folder, but not one that you're going to be typically going into and doing any editing to. You've got the public folder, another one that is important, but usually you're not going to be making very many edits to this folder. So these two folders are kind of, they're not really super important for the purposes of actually developing. And then you have the SRC folder. The SRC folder is the kind of really entry point of your application. And mainly this app.js is where the front end really begins. This index.js is technically it is part of the beginning of your application, but usually you're not making any real changes to this. This is where you're really going to kind of start the development process. Okay, so now again, back to the package.json. If you look here, the script to start the program is start. Start generates the front end, and that's how you're going to build your app. Okay, so how do we go ahead and run the app as it is? Since as I said, we're going to have our front end from the beginning. You're going to run this npm start. Oh, got some errors. I already knew that was going to happen, and that's a good thing. Okay, so why is this happening? Well, the reason is because you're not actually in the folder where the program begins. Okay, so if you press ls, you'll notice there's a new folder created. That was created by the npx command that we ran previously. And you'll want to go inside this folder so that you can actually start the app. So you go ahead, enter into the folder, and then press ls, and you'll see that these files are the same as what you have in your IDE environment. All of these are, like as we said, very important, but the entry of the app is really inside this src folder. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to run the app. If you want to type in a command that you previously already typed, you don't really have to retype it. You can just press the up arrow, and that'll get you to a previous command that you wanted to run. So I was here, I pressed up a few times, and now I can press npm start. npm start will then run the app, and it should just open up a browser where your application will be viewable locally. And it actually, if you look here, it kind of gives you some information. And how does it give you, how does it know to give you that information? Well, if you look, actually, I think it's in here. Well, never mind. I won't get into it, but it should be open here. Oh, okay. Usually it opens on its own. I think it did open, but I didn't see that. So okay, so there's your app. Okay, and if it doesn't open up automatically, you can always just grab the local address here and type that into your browser, copy and paste. Okay, so there's the application. Now, as I said, the app.js is where the program really begins, and I can demonstrate that. Like if I go ahead and delete this paragraph, where you see down here it says edit, so on and so forth. If I delete this and then press save, you'll see it's removed. So that's really the beginning entry point of the app. Okay. So now the first thing that you'll want to consider when you're making a website usually is you're going to want to have like a nav bar, a place where people can kind of be directed where to go. Maybe they want to see your about me, or they want to contact you, or so on and so forth, something like that. So that's where we're going to actually begin. Okay. Now, again, you don't need to have coding experience. That's the point of this. I'm going to teach you how to do this using AI. Okay, so we're going to go to your typical chat GPT, um, you know, uh, prompt, and you're going to prompt it. You're going to ask it to please generate a nav bar. And then you're going to want to say something like that is mobile responsive. What does that mean? That just means that your application is going to run in a particular way when it's in mobile mode, and when it's in desktop mode, it's gonna maybe change. But the point is, and the way I like to develop is usually mobile first. So that means that my app should run the best, or should be planned to run on mobile. And then later on, I can change it, adapt it with media queries and so on to make it look better on both desktop and or any other device. Okay, and I'm going to teach you a way to kind of work through that process and use ChatGPT so it's not too difficult. All right, so we have this navbar code which ChatGPT gave us. I'll expand this. It gives you the React code, right? Usually, this is almost always the case. It gives you some level of React code, and then it gives you some styling code. All right, and then it also shows you how to bring that code into your project. Okay, so we'll start from the first bit of code. All right, so it gives me the React code. Now, where do I put this React code? That's a good question. Okay, I don't like to put too many things in one folder. I like to have particular folders where certain files are going to go that I don't necessarily have to look at unless I'm absolutely trying to change that particular part of my project. Okay, navbar is pretty important, so you're going to want to keep it separate from other parts of your application. All right, so let's just say I created a folder, right? I like to do a folder called components. Okay, oops, not a file, but a folder. Okay, in a folder, I'll call it components. This is going to be like all of the things in your front end. Now, keep in mind, everything we're doing right now is just front end. We're not doing any back end yet. So just keep that in mind. So I make a components folder, right? And there's some issues with what I've done here, but we'll figure that out shortly. But here's the components folder, right? That's where I'm going to want to put my navbar and any other kind of interesting components that I'm going to want to render on my front end. I might want to have a nav bar. I might want to have particular sections that I can, maybe manipulate or change based on what page I'm on, or where I'm putting a particular thing on my app. Don't want to get down into the details, the jargon, but let's just go ahead and take this nav bar, right, this navbar code, and we're going to create a new file in our components, and we're going to call it whatever ChatGPT suggested, which is usually a pretty good naming convention. Okay, the AI is pretty good at giving you an idea of what you should name things, and usually it's a pretty good starting point. Sometimes you'll want to change things as you go if you have components that are pretty similar. But we'll just go ahead and drop the navbar inside the navbar file and then press save. Okay, so the navbar's in there, but all this is really doing is showing you like exactly what sections you're going to have and giving you the basic behavior of the code. Okay, that's what the React does. But below is the navbar styling file. This is where based on what your class name is, or basically some kind of headings and titles, your code, your styling code, is going to inject styles into your elements. Okay, so let's just take this as is, just like it is. We'll grab the code and we'll make a new file. Now, it's important to usually what you want to do as a standard practice is put your styling files in the same file as your actual component, React component. So inside components, I'll create a new file. And again, I'll take the naming convention that ChatGPT suggests, grab it, copy it, and then create a new file and paste it. Okay, so navbar.js, it's empty. I grab the code, I paste it in. Okay, so that will kind of give me a fully functioning navbar with styles. Now, how do I actually use the navbar in my program? Well, it actually tells you down here. You'll go to your app.js, which we already have. Okay, it's in the public folder, or not public, sorry, the SRC folder. We go to app.js, and it's not there right now, but it's telling you, ChatGPT is telling you, hey, put the navbar in there. So let's just say I went ahead and put it in there, right? If you look at the program again, I would say you want to put it above the title there, because if not, it's going to render below it. So let me give you an example. If I go down here and type it here, okay, oh, we have an error. Why do we have an error? Well, you put the component that you created, the navbar, inside the file, but how does the file know where the component is? It doesn't. And that's why you have these statements up here, the import statements. So what you want to do is type in import, and you're going to be importing the navbar. Now, the question is, what do I do? What do I type? Well, the good thing about IDEs is they're very intuitive. They know what you're trying to do usually. So if you start typing navbar, you'll notice that I'll have this little drop-down menu already appear, and the top selection says ... /components /navbar. And that makes sense because that's where our file is that we newly generated. So the IDEs are pretty intuitive. If I just press enter, it'll go ahead and place the full import statement in, assuming that that's what you want to use. I go ahead and press save, but there's still an issue. Okay, let me just go ahead and see. Let me refresh this just in case. Okay, navbar is not defined. Okay, I did define it, navbar. Okay, so let's just stop and regenerate. This should be working, but there is an issue that I know is happening. We'll go ahead and let it run again. I just kind of want to generate the error that I'm pretty much sure is going to be generated. Okay, so what I'm thinking is likely is that the navbar is in a terrible location under the image. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it and place it above the image. Okay. Now I'm getting the error. Not sure why it wasn't showing before, but you know, sometimes it can be a little weird trying to generate a particular error. Okay, so if you look here, now the reason I'm trying to show you these errors is because I want you to get familiar and kind of understand why you're getting an error and what to do when you get an error. Don't freak out and say, oh, I can't, I'm done, I can't do this, and throw in the towel. A lot of times you could just grab the error and put it into ChatGPT, and if you read it quickly, it'll tell you what's going on. But in this case, it's very obvious what's happening. The module is not found. You're attempting to import something which falls out of the project SRC directory. So what it's saying is that this component, it's fine, you can use it, but not if it's outside SRC. So you might be asking yourself, oh, shoot, what do I do? Well, you're going to want to grab the component file and place it inside the SRC. But that's a scary proposition because look, you have all these import statements. What is that going to do? Well, the lucky thing for you is that IDEs are pretty intuitive, so it should just actually change all of the import statements based on where you put the file. Okay, that can be quite scary sometimes if you're working on a big project and you're moving a lot of files. But in this case, our project is basically brand new. We haven't really done much, so it's not that scary. We're going to go ahead and put the components. And by the way, you can just, with Visual Code, you just grab the file and you place it inside SRC by just kind of clicking and dragging and then letting it go over SRC. It's going to give you a prompt and say, are you sure you want to move this into SRC? And yes, that's very much what we want to do, because we can't use this file in our main program if it's not inside SRC. Okay, so that's not a problem. You just got to kind of develop your stuff inside and, follow the prompts, follow the errors, do what the errors are telling you to do. So we'll move them. And the great thing is, with Visual Code, like I said, it asks you, would you like to update the imports or the components? You don't always have to. Sometimes that can be a scary proposition. But in this case, like I said, we're just going to go ahead and do it. Now that the components are all set, I'm going to go ahead and press save. And we have some issues. Let's go back to the app. We have navbar, components, and I'm going to restart. I'm going to press save again. This is weird. My app has been acting up a little bit. It's usually pretty straightforward. Let's remove the navbar for a sec. Press save. Okay, we're back to where we wanted. So as you can see, this is highlighted. I'm gonna remove this and try to import it again. Okay, so now we're in components. Sometimes you have to do that. You have to remove, if you're importing something, you gotta remove the import and redefine it to where it is. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put the navbar in and press save. Okay. I think having it below the image is the real issue. So navbars usually are at the top of your component. Okay, let's remove everything and then type in the navbar. Press save. Okay, let's go back. Let's remove the navbar. Okay, we're back to where we started. Let's go back into our navbar and see what's going on. Okay, I'm going to restart the app. This is odd. I didn't run into this error before, but that's okay. It's good to run into errors sometimes so you can get confident with your development. Okay, so we have a navbar component. It could be that this navbar component is poorly designed by the AI. But we're just going to assume it's not and try one more time. Okay, so we've imported the navbar, go down, finish this, and okay. So we're getting some errors, so I'm going to just grab this and put it into the AI. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you why this is happening, okay? And I want you to see how ChatGPT kind of gives you this, gives you prompts and lets you know why things are happening. Okay, so it apparently it wants us to import it from within, but it's inside the components. So let's see. Okay, so it seems to be something with the way I'm importing it. But I have the right code. So I'll just go ahead and tell it my navbar is inside my components inside SRC, and I have the following code in the navbar.js. Type in your code, press enter. Okay. Okay, so Import with the curly braces. Not sure why that is how I'm importing it. Navbar from components.navbar. Sorry about this. Not sure why it's causing so many issues. I'm inside the navbar components navbar and app.js navbar is inside there. This is bizarre. There it is. Well, it's sometimes it can be a little tricky playing around with this type of with the code. And look, you just want to be confident. If you get an error, work with the ChatGPT. Listen to what the error is telling you. If you have to recreate the component, there should be no problem for you if you're confident and able to prompt the ChatGPT properly. So as you can see, I now have a what is called a responsive component, and that's great, but it you can see that it looks pretty ugly. Okay, it has a hamburger, but the hamburger really doesn't do anything. But it's mobile responsive, so if I move my screen short and large, it actually adjusts. And there's another thing you can do here with a lot of IDEs. They come with an integrated development. Not the IDE, excuse me. The browser will come with an integrated development type of simulation here, so you can actually open this up. How do you open it up? You right click inspect usually. That's the easiest way for almost all the browsers to do it. There's some shortcut keys, but this is the way you pretty much do it in every other environment. And then the great thing is now you can simulate the different types of devices that people use um, in their regular everyday situation. So most of the ones here are going to be like iPads and mobile phones, and that's going to show you what your code is going to look like when it's in when it has those dimensions. The dimensions are basically like how long is the screen, how wide is it, so on and so forth. Okay, so you have the nav bar, and when you click it, it's fully interactive, meaning you're actually going to a particular route, particular destination, and you can actually begin changing things based on what route you're in. So if I wanted to, I could I can actually change what the view is based on where you are. But before we do that, I'm thinking this nav bar needs a lot more work. It doesn't look very good. So let's go to ChatGPT and ask it to give us a better nav bar. But how do we do that? Let's just tell it what we don't like about it. The nav bar is not as sleek and as I want. I would like the mobile mode to look better, and for the hamburger to be more interactive. I don't know, something like that. Okay. Because like you can see that it's not very interactive. It doesn't even change. It just opens up and there's no change to this what we call a hamburger. So that's kind of ugly. So let's see what ChatGPT suggests we do. Okay, so it gives us new navbar code, which is fine. We're gonna grab that code At this point, we haven't really done much but just paste the navbar code into the app. So I don't think it's that big of a leap to just go ahead and remove the navbar code as it was and paste this new code. Okay, so we paste the new code, and then we obviously need to change the styles. Now, you're going to want to be keep things consistent because the styles, again, they are directly related to what your components, what are the elements classes, what are their naming conventions. So you're going to want to be careful with how, as you make more edits, with keeping these things consistent. So you can always backtrack if you want. But okay, so now we have something a little bit more special. You see? Okay, one thing I noticed is the X looks a little odd, but it's definitely more interactive, and I would say it looks a lot more solid. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. Now we can actually begin to tell ChatGPT specifically what we like and what we don't like. I personally think this isn't that bad, okay, but the X looks a little off. So let's just say I noticed the close out button on the hamburger has an X that looks off. It doesn't, it seems to be not fully an X, whatever. ChatGPT, you don't need to like have perfect English or like be able to explain every piece, use every piece of jargon, but you need to be able to give it something that will allow you to kind of change things, uh, if that makes sense, without without change. Well, you got to be careful not to change your code too much. So now we're getting to a point where, hey, it's going to tell you specifically where to change things, so you don't have to change your entire navbar structure. You can just kind of change particular aspects. And this is where you begin to drill down into what the code actually does without actually having to sit through a class or like, go through a hard 4 year degree or whatever. So what does it say? It says, hey, you have this hamburger.open span, so on and so forth. And you just kind of look for that. Where is that in the code? Hamburger.open span. This is the behavior that is being changed based on what you're trying to do. So you can see they did have this child too, but if you look, they didn't mention this here, but it just kind of carries over into the next code. So I think it would be okay to just take all of this, remove it, and then replace it with this. And the good thing is you can see these little green areas, these are comments. So a lot of times it'll generate the comments for you to help you understand where in the code you need to make changes. Okay, so now we have changed that to that, and then it even a lot of times it'll offer you extra ideas for how you can change things. Um, so let's just quickly, before we do the optional thing, let's go back. Okay, that looks pretty bad. That actually looks way worse. Um, but it says that you want the bars to be evenly spaced and aligned. So maybe we make this change first, and then we can decide whether or not this actually works. So uh, let's take this, which looks slightly different than what we have here, and we'll replace it. Oops. Let me grab this first and then just replace it. There we go. And I go here. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now the X looks a little bit more improved, but let's go ahead and also change the actual hamburger code because I think there's still some slight adjustments that need to be made. Oh, close. I actually like the way that looks, but it's still off. Okay. Um, let's go back to this and see Go back to this and see if we can maybe change this to, keep this over here. Change this to, let's say, 2. See what that does. Nope. Let's change. So I noticed that a lot of things were changing over here. So let's change the height to say 5 and see what that does. Okay, that doesn't do much. 3. Let's change the rotation to be 30. Let's see what that does. No. Okay. Negative 60. No. Okay, so I'm gonna target in on this. For some reason, the X still doesn't seem, doesn't look symmetrical. It is as if the X looks good on the left side, but not the right. Because that's kind of what's happening. It's like the left side looks good, but the right side seems to be cut off before the lines, let's just say cut off, whatever. See, so it's gonna know what you're saying if you're careful with your wording and you can really explain. Um, so let's go ahead and, it seems to be something with the way the hamburger is sitting. So let's go ahead and pop this in there and then press space and then hamburger bars. That's, the span is the bars that are being created. Okay, so, and then the X shape. So this is where the X shape, so the X shape is happening here with this hamburger section. Um, mm. So I think I noticed something. I think it has to do with the container here. Um, so it looks good, but it is as if the X is inside a container that cuts off the right side. Because if you look at it carefully, you can see that there's like, it's almost like this side is not rendering. Okay, so now it's starting to get the idea, I think. So what it's saying is remove the overflow hidden. Are there any overflow hiddens? I don't see any. Let's temporarily add this test, it says. Yeah. So that's a good test because it shows that there is something up with this. Okay, so the hamburger may not have enough width. Let's try that. And let's shrink. Nav container. Overflow visible. Let's try that. Hmm. Sometimes it helps to grab all your code and just go ahead and put it in. Unfortunately, the navbar X state still looks cut off side. So I am basically seeing only the left side of the X. Here is my styling thus far. It helps to just go ahead and put all of your code, especially when you start making a lot of changes in, and see what it can suggest. So, okay, hamburger. So let's take this and replace our hamburger with this, and our span with this, and see what that does. And then make the proper rotations. See what that does. No. Temporarily add this. Okay, so unfortunately, that does nothing to address the left side, the missing right side of the hamburger. Here is my code. Updated CSS corrected. This can be a tough process, especially when it comes to styling, but if you keep at it for long enough, you'll get what you want out of the styling, and then you'll feel like really accomplished. So let's go ahead and change. So we're gonna put all of this in to the animation, and now we're getting somewhere, guys. That X looks great. Okay, it took a bit, took some time, but patience is what it's all about. Styling is one of the hardest things to work with when it comes to ChatGPT, but when you keep at it and you focus, you not only learn how to code because you're kind of focusing in on the particular areas, but you feel a sense of accomplishment once you get to where you want. Now, I love the way it kind of moves out, and then the great thing is if I come out here, it changes to look more like that. Now, oh, I noticed one thing. I don't want to see the hamburger when it is open fully in desktop mode. It seems kind of like not really necessary. Like when you're in mobile mode, it's great, but when you're in desktop mode, this should be hidden. And that's not a very difficult process because everything about the mobile version is actually right here. So now anything that's not in here specifically, it kind of it takes from the main code. So if you make some changes, it just manipulates what it already knows for in terms of styling for the main code. If you want to change something in the main code, when it goes into the media query, it'll change the styling based on the screen size. Okay, so if the screen size is quite large, it'll use whatever's up here. If the screen size is below this pixel, it'll grab the styles here and make some changes to them. And then that brings me back to this topic of like using the browser tools. Here you can kind of get an idea of like what hold up. Trying to figure out how to click this without oh here I think it's like this. Um yeah, okay, here we go. So now I can manipulate the size of the screen. And when you change the size of the screen, right, you'll be able to see like where you want the screen to change. So again, if you go back to this or this, sorry, there should be a way for me to change the screen size. Trying to figure out. I haven't done this in a bit, so trying to work this so I can. Hmm. There should be. Let me go back. Man, usually there's a way to do this without. I'm trying to figure out how I can grab the screen without touching any of these, um, without touching the actual styles. Because here it's trying to treat you as if you're like touching the screen, if that makes sense. But I want to kind of um, hmm, move activity bar top, toggle emulation. I guess that's the only way that it can allow me to do that. There is a pretty confident there's another way, but anyway, my point is you can use um, the developer tools to figure out what point do you want the media query to kick in, if that makes sense. Okay, so now again, I want to change this so the hamburger is hidden when it's large. So I can just tell ChatGPT to handle that for me. So when the screen is in desktop mode, can we hide the hamburger menu? And it should be something like hidden. There's some style where it's just basically hidden. Um, so here it says maximum width, here it says minimum width. So all you're going to do is just grab that query and actually just paste it to the bottom. It even gives you a bonus if you want. I'm going to paste it above because the screen is larger, so I feel like it makes more sense intuitively. And then let's see if it works. Boom, it works. Okay, so when we're in large screen, there's no hamburger. And the second we get into a small screen, there's the hamburger. It works the same, but it hides that element or just kind of removes it. And notice that everything kind of moves to the right. I think that's okay. You don't have to do that. You can actually prompt ChatGPT to move it to the center and play with that. But I think that is a good starting point for this first video. We've got a nav bar. I still have a lot of styles that I would like to change about this, but I think this is a good starting point for just getting a general feel for how to work with ChatGPT, how to understand the styling components and where they are actually being used. Remember, the component itself has particular headings for their class names, basically titles, and that is where the styling is going to be injecting the style. So instead of having, you could theoretically have all of this inside of this file. But the point is to abstract it into another file and not have to look at all that style. So you can look at the component and manipulate the behavior or maybe add things and not have to look at a ton of crap. You're just looking at the main code, the structure of the code and its behavior, and then this injects the style in the back. But it's important, again, to keep consistency. You want to keep consistency with the naming convention. So if you make some changes in ChatGPT or ChatGPT suggests you some changes, you want to be careful not to manipulate or change the names. And you'll figure that out later. as errors occur. Um, Another thing is when you bring the component into the project, number one issue that we noticed was the components in this video. The components was outside of SRC. That threw an error. So we put it inside, and then we made sure that our import statement um, referenced where the file actually was, and then ran our code in that way so that it would actually render properly. Now let's go back to the project real quick, just to hammer home some of the other things here. So we're here. We've got our file, our nav bar. Let's just go ahead and remove some useless code like this, for example. That's that part there. And we don't need this link anymore. Let's remove that. Oops, made a little mistake. Probably removed. So I didn't remove the full element, and that could be a problem. If you remove only half an element, it's going to throw you an error. And we have our header. Notice how the header has a backslash there. That's completing the element of header. So if I remove this, I'm going to get an error. You see, but it tells you, hey, it tells you what the error is. And if you don't know what this is, you just type it into ChatGPT. It'll tell you, hey man, you remove part of your element. You can't have half an element that's not complete. And then I'll just leave this thing because it kind of looks cool. But as we go further, I will help you understand like how to gain confidence. You're going to want to gain confidence with your code so that when you get an error, you're not freaking out. You see, I didn't do any coding on the fly really. I just kind of work with ChatGPT. It told me what I need to put in, and when I ran it and I ran into some issues, I just carefully stepped back and I looked at what it is that I was doing, maybe rerun my program, try to generate an error, and if no error is generated, just go back, remove the component altogether, have ChatGPT generate another one, redo your import statement, and once you get it rendered, you're going to feel happy and confident it's there. It's not going to go anywhere as long as you have that completed. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. Subscribe, press like, do all that stuff so that I can get more views and keep bringing you more tutorials just like this. All right, have a good day.